let's talk about winning the war for diverse talent. It's my pleasure to welcome these distinguished panelists, true leaders in the field. First, we have Dr. Kathy Bihr. Kathy is the Vice President of Programs and Education for TGR Foundation, a Tiger Woods charity, providing direction to the personnel, programs, and operations of both the TGR Learning Lab and the Earl Woods Scholar Program. TGR Foundation provides career exploration and college preparation programs to high potential, low opportunity youth and families. The TGR Learning Lab enables students to put their academic interests into action with hands-on career exploration and college preparation classes. Prior to joining the TGR Foundation, Catherine was the principal of Vista View Middle School in Fountain Valley, California. She chairs the STEM Funder Network, a national organization providing resources and professional learning to help teachers, parents, and out-of-school providers better inspire and prepare our youth in STEM. We are also joined by Greg Jones, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for KeyBank. He leads strategy and tactics to improve the acquisition, movement, development, and retention of diverse talent and suppliers. Greg's experience spans the financial, healthcare, and technology industries, most recently serving as Chief Diversity Officer at United Airlines, where he developed and executed United's global diversity and inclusion strategy, including leadership development, employee engagement, resource groups, and relationship management with partners throughout the company. He also has roles at North. "100 Executives in Diversity" by Black Enterprise Magazine, who recognized Ed.D. Magazine's Power 100 in 2017. Greg's active in his community, serving on multiple boards as a trusted advisor, including the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. He holds a BS from Tuskegee and an MS from Stanford University, my alma mater. He also received multiple industry certifications, including Six Sigma. And we are joined by Lynne Caljouw. Lynne is Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Sensata Technology. As Lynne had mentioned earlier, Sensata is putting their money where their mouth is and recruiting through this conference. An HR executive with extensive experience in the engineering, automotive, and manufacturing industries, Lynne joined Sensata Technologies in 2014 and was appointed Senior Vice President of Chief Human Resources in June 2020. Throughout her over 20-year career, her passion and focus has been steadfast to design and deliver programs and processes that enable employees to do their best work, drive engagement, and become a company's competitive advantage. A strategist, problem solver, and trusted advisor, Lynne's area of expertise include organizational planning, talent and leadership development, communication, coaching, mentoring, developing and maintaining strategic working relationships with management, and adapting to and facilitating business climate changes. Thank you so much, each of you, for joining us today. Audience members, please note that the time, my pleasure, I'm so happy that you're here. Please note, audience members, that there will be time for Q&A at the end of our panel discussion. So type your questions into the chat panel on your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. If you have a specific panelist that you're directing your question to, please include that with your question. So let's kick off our discussion with an exploration of the types of barriers that our students and our young adults are facing when it comes to engaging in this very competitive race and moving into new frontier industries. Let's kick that question off with Lynne. Do you want to speak to what we're seeing in terms of challenges for our students? And then as well as we're going to ask Kathy, what are some of the tools that the TGR Foundation are bringing to the table?
Thank you, Alaina. We've seen quite a bit of challenges, right, in engaging and finding well-qualified students that want to be part of corporations. So now our focus is building approaches and finding ways and strategies to gain access, to show people the knowledge and make it fun to come to work. We're trying to create corporate cultures where people are engaged with additional resources, networking, and actually opening up communication channels where people feel like they can come forward and say, I'm really interested in this. How do I learn? What are some of those exciting events? And I think Kathy has some great opportunities to share some.
Thank you both. One of the things we try to do at TGR Foundation is work with young people who are just coming out of high school and are early in their careers in college, with giving them the opportunity to understand what that transition to the workforce might look like. And we work with them on job skills, just kind of basic, how do you prepare to go to work and be in the workforce? And then also, how do you network and actually leverage the people around you to really diversify your audiences? I think a lot of times one of the biggest barriers is people just don't have those connections, but they do, and they just don't realize it. So one of the greatest things I think we do is create a mentorship opportunity for young people to work with somebody who's either in the career field or just a professional mentor in general that can help them build their own networking advantage.
Thank you for that. I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I think that's part of the reason why this partnership between Base 11 and the Boulé is so important, because it offers an opportunity for access, for networking, because it's not just the people you know, it's also the people that they know. I learned that from you, Kathy. That's something that you taught me. But we also know that it's hard to be what you can't see. And so having an opportunity to have a mentor, to see what it's like to work in the industry, I think is an invaluable asset in the journey to increasing our representation. Now, let's talk about technology specifically, though, because that can also be a field that requires some demystification. And so, Lynne, I wanted you to speak a bit about how you can specifically work through sort of trusted organizations to make technology more accessible.
Yeah, that's a great leeway and segue, Alaina, into the ability to create an environment where ideas and innovation flow freely is really what we want to do at Sensata, right? We want to have an inclusive environment where learnings come easily and often. And we want to create opportunities, whether it's in the hiring practices or whether it's in STEM activities or local networking with colleges and universities. It's all about finding opportunities for connections and networking and really sharing the opportunities of don't pass up something that's in front of you. Like, take those experiences that are there, go meet people. You know, it's not just about who you know, it's also about who they know. And so make sure that you don't pass up an internship or because you're scared, or you may not have every single piece of the puzzle that you think you need to have. You'll learn that. And that's why we want to encourage people and continue to encourage people to attend things, whether that's social events, virtually or in person and safely right now during the pandemic. But we do want to find ways to get out there.
Excellent. And then, Greg, can you speak to the way that corporate America is addressing this issue? What are some of the ways that they are conducting outreach and expressing their commitment to diversity and inclusion? How can students take advantage of that?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things going on, given the times that we're in, happening all at the same time. I think corporations first begin the process of committing themselves to the work in a sense that they have the senior leaders on the organization understanding and knowing some of the issues that we're dealing with societally. And that sort of opens up the doors for hiring and thinking about internships and things of that nature. We're reaching out looking at, especially in the banking industry, how do we begin to get younger people to think about the skills they need to come into the industry? But beyond that, bringing in internships and getting people in, especially in technology. Technology and banking is a huge deal right now. And so we are actually hiring many internships with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, being very deliberate about it, and are really challenging ourselves as an organization to do that. So as I think about how we're hiring and what we're doing for next year, there's a very deliberate effort around making sure that our hires are diverse. So we're hitting the African American, the Latinx communities, as well as looking at women in these spaces.
I think that's so important when you're saying that you're being intentional about the recruitment and intentional about diversity and inclusion. And what I know with some of the organizations that I've worked with, that begins in part with data collection and trying to get a sense of where do you have representation in the firm, and where can it increase, and how do you build that pipeline. But one question that I have for you is, how are we looking at diversity? Because we here at Base 11, the goal is to prepare the best and the brightest to emerge into these fields. But very often, companies are not acknowledging that the best includes diverse experiences, opportunities to develop grit, opportunities to persevere, and ways of addressing challenges that they might not find in a majority community. Can you speak to that a bit?
Sure. If you look at the average job description, whether it's for an internship or a first level position in an organization, it's incredibly specific. But historically, these things have discounted all of those things that you mentioned that are characteristics to either begin to lead or to withstand challenges and all of those things. And so we start to talk about the best fit into an organization versus a specific job description. Don't get me wrong, we want you to have the technical capabilities, but there are other components to this whole thing that I think is very important, that speaks to what kind of leader you would be over the years, what kind of person you would be to work with. All of those things are as much a part of the work as anything. And so we interview with that in mind as well.
And I appreciate how you say that you interview with the idea of the best fit. And early on, I believe it was Lynne who said, don't be afraid to take the risk. Even if the job description doesn't specifically lay out your particular experience, don't be afraid to take the risk for applying for that position. Don't be afraid to take the risk in reaching out to potential mentors in the field. Kathy, can you speak a bit about, again, the universe of students that we're talking about, and whether or not, and ways that they can reach out to mentors and engage and network for success?
Yeah, thank you, Alaina. I think, one of the things that I work with a doctoral program in leadership, and it's the same thing. I think people are really hesitant, as Lynne pointed out earlier, to put themselves out there and really let people know who you are. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? If you reach out to somebody and they say no, you just move on to the next person. There's no risk there. But the advantage and the upside is so great if you leverage your LinkedIn, if you leverage your internal network to try to meet other people, your mentor. Who are they talking to? Where do you want to be? And I think you really, as a student and as a young professional, you really need to think about, how can I put myself out there and take those risks, put yourself in the place for greatest potential. And a lot of times that is really as simple as that. It's about working your network, working the opportunities that are out there. Do something that you never thought you would do before. And I think that's what really, business and corporations are looking for too, is that people that are good, deep thinkers that want to do different types of things, and they can show that diversity in their interview, but also on their resume. They've really had that broad, vast experience.
Thank you for that. And this is for any of my panelists. In developing the workforce of the future, we certainly need to have particular pipelines from school to the company or from school to the field. Can you highlight any of the pipeline programs or beyond? So you mentioned internships, but if you could just walk through some of the ways that you're building pipelines from school or out of school to the industry. Kathy, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Greg, and then we'll go to Lynne.
Sure, I'd love to jump into that. So one of the programs of the TGR Foundation is the TGR Learning Lab, and it was really designed as a way to help young people connect what they're doing in school every day to the real world of work. I think oftentimes we think, school isn't connected. It's this place where you learn this information. But what if we really reimagined the way schools operate and actually put them in a position to help young people think about what their career step might be? And I don't think we do that directly enough. So our classes and programs are designed to give kids a hands-on experience in what it would be like to be an aerospace engineer. What would it be like to code and to create your own video games? What about developing an app? What's your unique idea about creating an app that can help people and make a difference? And, I think, Alaina, the biggest message that I keep seeing over and over and over again is that we continue to work in silos. Education is over here, business and corporate is over here, higher ed is somewhere in the middle. There's such a great opportunity if we can try to bring those things together and just do things that make sense and not make people go through a bunch of hurdles that just delay the process. I think we don't do ourselves any favors sometimes when that happens. But again, I think, programs that allow kids to explore different types of things, corporations that have reached out to K-12 and are actively creating that pipeline in jobs or externship opportunities, even job shadowing, or simply a conversation, an interview, an idea networking interview. That would go a long way to help young people at any level really start thinking about what it would take to enter the workforce.
That's very helpful. It's very helpful. And Greg, I'm going to turn that question to you in terms of the programs that you know of that are creating pipelines between school and the field, the industry, or out of school time to the industry.
Sure. Well, one of the things I think about immediately are the affinity groups, or as we call them, BRGs, and the volunteerism into the community that we have with especially young people. I think we have 12 in play right now, and they hit the various schools, and they may adapt or mentor kids from those places, from those schools. That's a big deal because it provides a level of exposure. And someone used the term earlier, demystification. It demystifies the work world for them as you get to meet people who actually work in some of these companies. But the other thing would be the internships as you begin to be a little bit more formal in employing and developing these young people as they think about the bridge between their studies and the real world of work, and actually allowing them to see or look under the hood, if you will, of what it's going to be like to begin to work as they matriculate through school. There's another program that I try to stay connected with in my prior life at United Airlines, which is it's a group of organization called ACE Camps. And it's based on African American pilots who are just teaching kids how to fly. And they do it on the weekends. I mean, so there's several things out there like that people can begin to take advantage of to demystify the world for you.
Excellent. And I'm also on the board of the NAACP, and I know that they have a STEM boot camp that is invested in by many companies that provides access to African American students in high school to explore the world of STEM and to explore that industry. Lynne, do you also want to speak to that question about pipeline programs between corporate America and our schools?
Yeah, that's great. segue, Alaina. So at Sensata, it's a very global company, and we are very lucky and privileged to actually be able to do many different events throughout the world, including a lot of STEM activities. We bring students and children on site from an early elementary right through college activities in different locations around the world. So I think both Greg and Kathy kind of mentioned that those are real pipeline for awareness and letting people kind of learn hands-on. We also, once during, when we have internships programs on site, we actually are doing much more formal lunch and learn with leaders. You may come in as an electrical engineer, and maybe we pair you up with a chemical team, engineering team, or a design engineer, or even a finance leader. So you're learning different aspects of being in the business. I think that just having that openness and communication and really engaged with projects on site, hands-on, really helps build that connection and continues to build the pipeline and awareness for people. So even most this summer, we actually had in a couple locations, we even had outdoor movie nights for STEM activities for people to come and learn things on site and see the sites, but also have something for the younger population as well.
Thank you. I actually, for the most of your programs, I'm looking at the chat right now in terms of the Q&A, and I also want to prepare the audience to go ahead and start submitting your questions into the Q&A if you have not done so already. But one question that popped up, I believe when Kathy was speaking, but each of you can speak. For example, an internship program with your company, or a program that you have referenced, because it's often our students are both burdened with school and additional jobs. And so I'm curious if you can speak to how you ensure that students can participate in these types of programs and how long they tend to take.
Sure, Lynne, I'll start.
Kathy, let me
if you don't mind. So it's.
Oh, go ahead, Lynne.
Go ahead, Lynne.
Go ahead. Feel free. Lynne, you start.
No, that's fine. So at Sensata, we have a variety of internship programs, including, in most cases, it's summer internships for college students, as well as there are interns in different parts of the country and world throughout the year. So if your schedule allows and we can make that work, we have that. But typically, it's a 12-week program in the summer. Paid internships where we are exposing and providing opportunities to come back year after year that ends up into full-time roles at the end as well.
Perfect, thank you. And Kathy, do you want to address it as well?
You know what, I was just kind of watching the chat also, and I think it's kind of relevant here as well. The question was about, are there opportunity workshops for community college students who are first gen, low income, may have disabilities, who are interested in pursuing careers in STEM? And absolutely, there are lots of different, programs on campuses, everything from, but, you have to kind of go looking for them as well. They may be connected to incubators and accelerators that are in existence out there. Sometimes it's a really great opportunity to if you have a cool idea that you want to actually incubate and build. A lot of college campuses or community college campuses now are encouraging that kind of free creative space. So I would recommend kind of taking a look there. In addition to, certainly talking at the administration level at the community college about what might be the best fit for you. But I think the important thing is try everything and don't be deterred. Just put yourself out there, and these opportunities exist. And in terms of internships specifically, many of the programs that are established on community colleges and on college campuses are backed by corporate donors and as well as foundations and individual donors. But they oftentimes have those direct pipelines into the businesses so that you can get an internship with those types of companies. So for us, when we work with our scholars, we have a scholarship program. We encourage our students to Go to their career centers on campus. Better yet, go to the career centers specifically within your department of interest or your major area of interest. And you have to do it soon. Like right now is the time if you're looking for an internship for next summer. Like now is almost too late, but you better get on the stick. There are opportunities out there, and many corporations have been flexible with creating virtual intern opportunities as well. Some are paid, some are not paid. I would try to keep your options open as much as you can.
Excellent. And Greg, did you want to speak to this issue of timing?
Well, I would, yeah, I would piggyback on what's been said. Someone mentioned earlier about some of the barriers for success. If you're shy or if you're, aren't sort of aggressive enough to move forward and just apply, whether it's going to websites or networking or whatever, you'll miss the opportunity. And timing is really important for internships, especially the paid internships. We actually started recruiting in September, late August, September, for internships for next year. While it's not completely late, I would say get on it and look at websites and make your applications as visible as possible. So push it.
Well, if there is one consistent, very consistent theme of this discussion, it is to have no fear and to be bold and to push, to leverage your network. And that's the first question that has cropped up for me in the feed for Q&A is, once you have your network, how do you utilize it? And for each of you, I'd like you to just give me a couple of what you would say are your crib notes or best practices for what to do when you have an opportunity to engage with a leader in the field, as I'm certain is going to be the case with this partnership between the Boulé and Base 11. Students will have unique access to leaders in the field. What do you do once that connection is made? Starting off with Kathy.
So I'm going to. Okay.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh. Sorry about this. I'm glad that everyone's eager to jump in, though. That's great. Okay. Kathy, wait, I'm going to put you on hold because I heard Greg first. So Greg, go. You go ahead. Tell us what to do to leverage that network.
Well, this is a secret between me and the young people. And don't tell anyone I told you this. But executives love to talk about themselves. So when you network with them, be driven by your curiosity. They'll have a great conversation with you. They'll do 70, maybe 80% of the talking, and they'll think it's the best discussion in the world. So be driven by your curiosity, ask great questions, and truly seek to understand and learn about what the executives have to offer.
Man, I wish I had known that when I started my career. I wish I'd known that when I first started my career. Those are wise words. Kathy, what were you going to go ahead and say?
I was going to say he's absolutely right. People like to talk about themselves and their experiences, but make sure that you have a purpose when you go in to have a conversation with somebody and some questions, not just, hey, I want to talk to you. Can you give me a job? Really be thoughtful about what is it you want to learn, maybe about this person or about the industry that they represent, or, sharing your ideas. Those types of things I think are important to kind of set you up for success right from the beginning.
Kathy, that's really good feedback. And I would also just add to what Greg and Kathy said and share. Ask when you're in front of the team or an executive or leader, ask them what they were thinking when they started their career, right? What do they look for in an employee? If you want to learn too, and that the inquisitive mindset and the ability to put yourself out there to learn is really going to be, it really matters, right? You want to make sure that you're not just talking. Take the opportunity to learn from the people you're in front of, because that network and that inquisitive mindset is going to matter. leading that way and showing the value of that is really going to be helpful.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul, for those responses. I'm looking now, I'm turning to the Q&A. So if you haven't entered your question, please do so. We're getting a lot of important wisdom and rich information. So one question is, what are your liaison experiences with local schools for STEM outreach? Do you partner directly with teachers or administrators, or how do you engage them? I'm assuming that's from someone who is in the education industry and wondering how are you engaging with teachers or administrators, or how does it work? Let's start off with Greg.
We actually, and from a local perspective, we actually do engage with the administrators, whether it's a junior college and in some cases, depending on the program, high schools. As when we recruit, nationally from specifically maybe HBCUs, obviously we deal with the career office, but we try to show up and I try to build relationships with some of the deans of the schools to make sure that this is a very greedy thing, but get access to some of the great students out there. And so those relationships are very valuable to companies when it comes to loading up the internship pipeline.
Did anyone else want to address this? Kathy and Lynn, how are you engaging with students at schools? Is it through administrators or through teachers?
So we both. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, we have a delay, so my apologies to the audience a little bit. So we do have relationships with local school districts, school superintendents, and local principals to bring kids to our learning labs and participate in programs. We also developed, because we found in very short time that the programs that we were offering kids really had implications for classroom instruction. And so we developed TGR EDU Create, which is the professional learning arm of TGR Foundation. We work with educators to think about how they can improve their own classroom approach and working with kids, insert more inquiry, more real world project-based opportunities for kids so that they're better prepared. And then, we also work with those teachers to help them teach other teachers on their campuses as well. So it's a critical piece for us to make sure that we have that direct access to schools.
And Lynn, what about Sensata?
Sure. We sponsor certain programs at school, projects at certain schools. We work with advisors and instructors on curriculum. And then I would say, there's some fun things that we can do too. So, there are partnerships within our communities where we can donate parts and things like that for, we did give some parts to Cornell's auto race team project, so we're getting exposure, and the teams are seeing actual live, like what can I do and how can I create this really fun work environment. So I think that's critical, but it's all of the above to get out there and to make those partnerships and pipeline.
And Lynn, I'm going to address the next question to you. Because it specifically asks, we've offered a number of tools and a lot of insight, but it specifically asks, what should I do to improve my chance of getting an internship?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, really focus making sure that your resume and when you're sharing what your background is and what you want to do, you have some opportunity to talk about your ability to learn, to lead. You want to engage and learn new things. You want to be able to add things like you've spent extra time learning about a specific project. You've identified that. You can walk through. You're not answering questions during that interview process with yeses and nos. You're providing some really good, I would say, experiences that you've had, and recognize that it isn't about. It is about making sure you can share what you've learned in a way that helps people understand the value you're going to bring, because it's much greater, as Greg talked about. It is very much about fit and hoping, and finding that partnership and relationship with a company and a manager or a leader that you can look up to. You can look as a network, mentor, maybe run in the hall, talk to in the hall and say, I heard this. But, it's equally as much about understanding the competencies in your skills. So if you want to be an engineer, you've got to have that skill set, but you also got to be able to talk to people and understand the financial part of what does it cost to make a part? How can I influence in that? So you're learning more and more. And I think the networking is critical, but really extend yourself to really go out and find one.
Thank you. Now, this is an interesting question that I think each of you can speak to. We keep hearing about diversity and before the recent civil unrest and now, how has diversity and inclusion changed? So we saw a number of companies step up and make performative statements in the wake of the BLM protest, Black Lives Matter protest and such. How has diversity and inclusion changed? The commitments of companies changed? Are they doing anything different from your perspective? Kathy, let's kick that off to you, then go to Greg, then go to Lynne.
Yeah, so it's such a good and important question. I would say that I believe that it really caused everyone to pause and take a good, hard, sobering look at their organization and their practices internally, and also what they were saying to the world and trying to identify if there are gaps that exist there. So, I think that's a positive, because I think it gives us the chance to really determine the best pathway forward when we do that. I think rushing to put out a statement absent of the practice behind it is not good form. So I think, I've seen lots of the companies that we work with, and even internally in our own organization, really just pause and take a look at what we're doing right, what's the evidence of that, and where are we missing the mark. And I think that it's going to be a long-term proposition, I think, for our organization and others as well, to really just frankly do better.
Greg, do you think
from
that
my
as well?
from my perspective, it's been really interesting because even when I was still an engineer designing things, I remember early on in my career there was a lot of conversation about diversity. Then it was about diversity and inclusion. Then it became about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And all of those are great things. But sometimes I felt like another word was being added on because they couldn't quite get it right. There is a challenge right now, and I think everyone has had to take a stop and look before the events of the last few months to say and be honest with themselves about where are we really going with this effort, and understanding the gaps and the commitments and really trying to truly live up to the commitments. Everyone's made a statement, or many organizations have made statements over the last several months. The challenge is going to be with these public statements. What are you really willing to do to bring about the change that's needed? That's been needed for a long time, but it's become very obvious that it's needed now. So we've all had to reflect in what this means. And we've gotten a little bit less shy in talking about race in a lot of companies. I was listening to some of the conversations earlier, And we're getting specific around the African American experience or the Latino experience or the Latinx community in general as we think about diversity. So what's changed is that there is an authenticity that's different, and there's a level of accountability that I think is different.
Greg, I
Very
think that's a
insightful.
great, very insightful. I agree. Greg and Kathy, thank you. Those were great words. I would say that, from a corporate a view as well, the making sure you're pausing to take authentic kind of reviews of and being very transparent and understanding where you currently are to build that path to where you want to be is really important. Making it clear as an organization that it's important to be authentic and to use your employee resource groups and learn more, to understand and build partnerships. And I think Base 11 is a great first step for a lot of people, a lot of companies and corporations as well. So I do think that we are seeing really a little bit of a pause and a step back in some places for exactly what Greg said. It's going to really matter to really continue to move forward. But you got to know, kind of where you're at, and you got to put some mission critical kind of topics of conversations around it, but opening it up and being available and transparent and open and willingness to listen is really critical for corporations.
Thank you. So we are reaching the end of our session, but there are still a couple of questions in the chat. I've noticed one question talking about sort of alternate approaches to school time and working with companies to try to provide an alternate approach to periods in school and how those programs might be funded. I've seen questions about how we might be able to improve outreach even in these unique times of COVID-19. And then specifically asking how each of you and your organizations might collaborate more with faculty to prepare college students for STEM fields. I know we don't have time to address each of those questions in turn, but we are asking if you are able for our panelists to go to the lounge after this session to enable you to connect with some of the members of our audience who still have outstanding questions. If you're able to do that, that would be great. If you could let us know, we would appreciate it. So please let us know if you think you will be able to join us for just a few minutes to talk to some of our audience and answer some of their questions directly. I think it might be helpful in this last few minutes to talk about how the engagement and outreach has changed during these times of these very unique times of the pandemic. Do you want to speak to that, and then also let us know if you are able to join us for the lounge afterward? And this time I'm going to start with Lynne. How has outreach changed in the unique and unprecedented times of a pandemic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, it's a lot more virtual, as you can imagine. Just like we have Landon mentioned too. The virtual booths that Base 11 and the Next Frontier Initiative has created for the students and the companies today has been and the rest of this week and sessions will be great for people to reach out. But it's also, it really is understanding what those look like internally and externally. So building those connections within a global company like ours has been, we're matching randomly people up to have 15-minute conversations in a time frame. We're setting communications up that remotely, we are communicating very differently remotely, right? We're allowing, new platforms for communication. So continue to build that is critical, and there's no doubt that this pandemic, it hasn't stopped us from reaching out, but it just has changed how we're doing that. So we appreciate that. We're thrilled that we're able to make that flip, but it has not been easy for an organization that it likes to and values collaboration and innovation. So it's been a different and unique experience, but really excited to continue that. And absolutely, I'll be available after as well. Thanks, Alaina.
I can jump in.
Greg?
I think we lost your audio. There we go. Okay.
Okay, Kathy, please jump in.
Yeah, okay,
Zoom.
I'll jump in.
There's a delay.
Yeah, I'll be available as well for a little bit, and I'll leave my email address as well. In terms of what we've been doing most recently, we have a digital presence, tgreduexplore.org, but we also created a lot of really tidbit videos, both STEM Unplugged, activities that can be done at home with families and children, and created a variety of design challenges, and those can be found also on. We have a YouTube channel that has a pretty extensive playlist as well of activities and things that families and students can do, particularly during this time when we're encouraged to stay home and be well. So.
Thank you. And Greg, we're going to end on you.
Unfortunately, I can't. I have another meeting in 10 minutes. But I will say that it's really been interesting for us as we go through this period of COVID, in that I just started a job 6 months ago, and I haven't been in that city since I started the job, which speaks to organizations like mine. And I think a lot of organizations are rethinking work. And so to me, it expands the possibilities for students. All of our internships were virtual this summer. We had never done anything like that before. And so the talent pool for us has gotten bigger because people don't have to travel or they don't have to be in place for this. So it's opened our eyes. And so we're going to continue to engage virtually in ways that we hadn't even thought about before. So if there is a silver lining in all of this, it's that it's allowed us to begin to think differently about how we engage our employees and potential employees.
Thank you so much for ending on that silver lining, because it just proves that there is so much potential here. And we are so excited to see what is going to happen with our students and how diversity and inclusion and parity is going to affect our communities. So Kathy Bihr, Greg Jones, Lynne Caljouw, my apologies, Lynne Caljouw. Thank you so much for your expertise. And with that, we're going to wrap this panel, but stay tuned for our next discussion.